Hi and welcome to my review video for week 6 discussion assignment. In last week I provided you a case from our textbook. In this case you read some information about Missouri's reform of its juvenile justice system, and I asked you a few questions and you responded to these questions. I think overall you guys did a good job in your answers. Most of you guys answered questions either completely correctly or partially correctly, which I usually accept as full correct and give you full credit for your answers like that. Let me provide you my overview of the last week. Instead of providing a personalized response, personalized feedback, I'm going to give you an overall feedback regarding the case, and based on my answers for each question, you can kind of understand whether you answered your questions correctly or not. Starting from question 1. Question 1 asks, how are the politics of bureaucratic structure evident in Missouri's Division of Youth Service? Well, in Missouri, reform was led by a bipartisan advisory board whose members were judges, former legislators, civic leaders, and concerned private citizens representing all regions of the state. In this case, you can see the three different stakeholders or stakeholder groups in the politics of the administrative structure in place in the Missouri's juvenile system. It's the bureaucrats, it's the politicians, bipartisan people, and also the representatives of the community who are directly involved by this reform movement. So this is, I think, the most important element of the answer to this question. So we have an advisory board that represents two stakeholders, and the bureaucracy is doing the job on behalf of them. There are additional points that I can mention as well. A number of important political choice shaped Missouri approach. One or two points that I can share with you are locating the Reformed Division of Youth Services in the Department of Social Services, not in the Department of Corrections. I think that's a very important decision. Another one is centralizing system administration and policymaking in the DYS in order to ensure statewide consistency in youth services, philosophy, and supervision. So this is also another one. And in my written review, you will see more examples. So I'm going to move on to the next question. In question 2, I asked, in what specific ways are managers in the Missouri Division of Youth Services enabled and constrained? Well, first of all, the mechanism employed to change juvenile justice system in Missouri has been termed by experts resolution. That's a very important term, because if you read the case again, you will see that resolution is, it refers to the use of managerial authority and administrative directives to influence system change. That means the administrators, the public managers, are enabled to use their discretions, enabled to use their authority to accomplish certain goals that are legal and lawfully allowed. So that's an important enabler factor, I think. Other things that we can consider, I think, are perhaps budgets. Whether they are constraining or enabling is not discussed in the case, but you can consider budgets as both as an enabler and a constrainer. Other things that I can mention is that the Missouri system operates through state administrative structures and includes a number of structural reforms. One thing is a needs assessment and instrument that recommends services that will be reduced, that will reduce the likelihood of a youth reoffending by reducing risk factor linked to recidivism. That's an important thing. That means people are using a tool to assess the risk of reoffending and also likelihood of a person's rehabilitation, and then they make a decision based on that. And I think that's it for question 2. And in question 3, I asked you what direct government and indirect government entities are evident in this case, and also whether the juvenile justice is an inherently governmental activity or not. Well, if you look at the case in the book, it's explained in the book. I think in general it's a direct government initiative. There are not a lot of nonprofits or private companies are involved in the system. At least they're not mentioned in the case. So you can say the DYS, Division of Youth Services, is the most obvious example for direct government. And also you can perhaps reason that in a service like this, you can always expect some level of participation from nonprofit organizations, or perhaps a little bit of private organizations, private companies as well. Especially if you are going to have these people, have these youth gain some skills and reintegrate in the society, you need some help from the elements of the society, whether they're nonprofits or private companies. However, these are not mentioned in the book, but this is my kind of reasoning. The second part of the question was whether these services are inherently governmental activities. In other words, whether juvenile justice is an inherently governmental activity. If you ask my opinion, I think it's an inherently governmental activity, because let's remember the four important functions of government. First of all, government must provide law, that is the judicial system, authority, that is the policing, law enforcement, national defense, that is the army, and diplomacy, that is the State Department, in the case of U.S., and ministries of foreign affairs in other countries. If you consider these four functions of government, you can say juvenile justice system or juvenile justice services fall under the categories of the law and order, judicial system, and law enforcement. These are inherently governmental activities, and I think these activities should stay under the control of the government. You can get some help from nonprofits and from private companies, but these are inherently governmental activities and should be controlled by the state. Also, if you look at the definition of inherently governmental activities from our textbook, you will see a similar explanation, similar definition of inherently governmental activities, and I think the juvenile justice services will fall under the definition of inherently governmental activities as defined by OMB as presented to you in our textbook. Okay, so that's pretty much it for my review for this week. I hope you all enjoyed this case and learned from it. Feel free to send your questions or comments about this case, and take care of yourself.